a mandatory retirement plan, which was firefighters in first-class cities. Historically, first-class cities have not paid into Social Security for firefighters, and neither have the firefighters paid into Social Security. Well, Papillion did not hit the population threshold to be a city of the first class until 1970. It established a paid fire department in 2002. Based on legal advice, Papillion has been operating the same as other first-class cities and has not contributed to firefighter Social Security since 2002. However, the Social Security Administration made a determination late last year that the exclusion of Social Security coverage under the 1951 agreement applied only to those cities who were first-class cities at that time. That means Papillion began contributing 6.2% for firefighter Social Security. This is in addition to the 13% contribution already mandated under state statute. So Papillion firefighters also had to start contributing 6.2% for the first time. Without AM 2984, Papillion contributes a total of 19.2%. Its firefighters contribute 12.7% for a total of 31.9% compared to other cities of the first class who contribute 13% plus firefighters who contribute 6.5% for a total of 19.5%. So that's 31.9% compared to 19.5% of other first class cities. This obviously creates a huge inequity when it comes to firefighter retirement contributions for first-class cities. I should point out at this time, Bellevue is the only other first-class city in the same boat as Papillion, but Bellevue opted to pay into Social Security when its fire department became paid, and that has been figured into its budget negotiations from the onset. So Bellevue is not part of this discussion. AM 2984 attempts to solve this issue and bring equity between first-class cities. It allows for an offset of the 6.2% paid into Social Security, so Papillion would pay 8.8 plus 6.2 for a total of 15. Its firefighters would contribute 6.5 plus 6.2 Social Security for a total of 12.7. Adjustments are made to other cities of the first class, bringing all first-class cities, with the exception of Bellevue, to the same contribution level. So that's what I like about AM 2984. But here's what gives me pause. First, the bill increases the city contribution from 13 to 15%, adding to the taxpayer burden. Contributions to other city employees are not mandated in statute, are generally between 6 and 6.5% contribution range, with equal contribution between employee and employer. Second, the bill redefines salary to include overtime pay when making contributions, which results in an overall additional cost on top of the base contribution rate increase of 2%. It's my understanding this provision has been accepted by both parties, firefighters and cities, but the point is, it is still an increase on the cost to the cities, on the cost to taxpayers. Finally, and most importantly, the bill requires health benefits post-retirement. Any firefighter who has served 21 years and has attained the age of 15 will have the option to continue on the group health insurance at the same rate for 2 years after retirement. I do understand being a firefighter is a physically taxing profession, and that firefighters who remain on the job through an advanced age risk serious injury. I do understand there's a gap between retirement at 55 and Medicare eligibility, but this does not fix that. So I will say this. There is an amendment that is yet to come up on the board. Senator Jacobson has an amendment, AM 3229, that would remove the health benefits language and fix the Papillion issue. I will support that amendment. And the underlying bill if that amendment is adopted. So I will continue to listen to this debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker Arch. Senator Mosier, you're recognized to speak.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, colleagues. How many times I've heard on this floor that the state issues unfunded mandates and how bad those are. And I'm not going to call out names, but all of a sudden now we're telling cities what to do. We're putting ourselves between the negotiations between the firemen and the cities. The cities primarily, the fire and police are primarily union, and they negotiate contracts with the cities. And Columbus just ratified their new fire contract. And the state shouldn't be involved in telling cities how much to pay, what benefits to give. Or if we are going to give those mandates, then we should put 50 million or whatever it's going to take in aid to the cities to pay for it. Because where are they going to go to raise these funds if we, after they've just signed a contract the ink is barely dry. And then all of a sudden we increase benefits. That's going to put a pinch on the city of Columbus. They just hired an extra dozen firemen to staff a second station because they all operated out of one station to this point, and it was making response times kind of long to certain areas in the town. And so they've staffed 2 stations, and this would be a terrific burden on them. The unions and the cities can always go to the CIR the union can take the city to the CIR if they think their contract is not fair or not comparable to other comparable cities, and they always have that option. But the state of Nebraska should not be telling cities what retirement to pay. And I'm not in any way discounting the value of fire and police and what they do for the community. I've seen them at work. I was mayor for 12 years, and I've spent a lot of time working with them. They do a great job. But this is a case where the state should keep their nose out of it and let the unions and the cities negotiate their contracts, and not be trying to tell the cities what to do. They've got problems, budget problems, most of them anyway, and by doing this, we're just going to increase property tax. That being said, I understand there is a negotiation underway. Senator Jacobson has an amendment that resolves some of the concerns that the cities have, and so I'm going to support Senator Jacobs' amendment when that comes up. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Mosier. Senator Vargas, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, I rise in support of Senator Wall's amendment and the underlying amendment 2984. I was actually struggling to read this. Maybe I need glasses. I'm against the floor amendment. A couple things I wanted to say. One, because I'm a member of the retirement committee. A real big thank you to the chairman, McDonald, for his work and his dedication to trying to get consensus on this. And I also appreciate that this is a version that we got out of committee. So there's a couple reasons why I support this. I was having this conversation off the mic with somebody that I know that there are opponents on this that have told me they oppose this because it's a large unfunded mandate. That's one side. But some of those same opponents are the people that say municipalities need to spend less and we need to tell them when they can and cannot spend, and we have to put hard caps on them for a lot of different other things. One of the reasons why I've supported putting spending limits is I don't necessarily believe, and it's just part of what we do here, that everything we do is either a funded or unfunded mandate. It is a value judgment. And the reason why I supported this bill is there are a lot of things that I think are value judgments on what we do and what we say matters in this body. Very similar to when we were fighting on behalf of law enforcement and debating how much should we do in terms of meeting the needs of our state patrol in terms of their retirement. And we had to eliminate, COLA, death benefits, but we still did something in the right direction. This is not a new conversation, and the reason why I'm supportive of it is there are firefighters that are currently been waiting and are trying to get an advancement in not only their retirement and benefits, but we've come to a standstill on negotiations in a lot of different ways. And if you heard the testimony in our committee, you would say, well, this is a time for the legislature to step in and be as much of an honest broker and advocate on behalf of firefighters and first responders, especially obviously in first-class cities. And I think that this is part of the crux, which is, I know there's some people saying, I don't want to support this because it's an unfunded mandate or because it's not our responsibility. But also, colleagues, some of you are the same individuals that will look at and say, we need to tell municipalities, we need to tell school districts to spend less. I just want to make sure that we are consistent with how we apply our value judgment. We say the taxes, specific property taxes, are getting very, very high, which I agree. And we should say, okay, this is the reason why we're trying to reduce people's ability to spend, because that's the value judgment that's more important, is the tax relief. And the same thing in this. The value judgment is we should be honoring and funding and doing more to make sure we're meeting the needs of our first responders and firefighters in this bill that are covered or increasing benefits underneath this bill. It's the value judgment, not whether or not we say we're just against unfunded mandates, because there have been many times here on the floor where we have supported unfunded mandates, and I'm just asking us to be consistent in how we approach that judgment. Truly. I know I've had that conversation with Senator Merman on education bills. Sometimes when we tell school districts what they can and cannot do, it also comes with, well, it could be an unfunded mandate, but we also think it's the responsibility of a school district to take on something, even if they tell us, well, that's going to cost us more money. It's a standard that we expect from them. And when they don't do it, we tell them, no, you have to do it. This is a similar situation. Do we care about whether or not we're meeting the needs and increasing the salaries and the contributions for firefighters? And that's what the bill does. It doesn't have the support of the league. And I know that there's work that Senator Jacobson has done and others are trying to do. I'm asking you to move this on to select, because with any good negotiation, we need the ability to have time to move something forward that can actually bring people to the table. But as you know, that doesn't always work with every single bill. But in this bill, I can say as a member of the committee,
That's your time, Senator.
thank you.
Thank you, Senator Vargas. Senator Conrad, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, colleagues. I rise in support of LB 686 and the amendment that the Retirement Committee has negotiated with the committee to advance the bill. I rise in opposition to Senator Hughes' amendment and other amendments that are filed. I think that we have a clear understanding that we have a very compressed timetable this morning and need to cover a lot of ground. But let me just walk you or reaffirm or reiterate, let me just walk you through a few of the key components here for clarity's purposes. So each city is absolutely free under the Industrial Relations Act to negotiate for benefits. But the state told the cities, which are creatures of the state, of course, over 100 years ago that firefighters have to have a pension. And that promise was abrogated about 40 years ago, back in 1984. Since that time, over decades, this issue has continued to languish. And the state has always had the right and the ability and utilized its authority to say how much the contributions and pay is going to be in retirement benefits. And the CIR can't take up changes to retirement benefits. So this is the remedy that is permissible and is before us. And I think of this, let me just, in the most simplest terms, before we get into the minutia on retirement, I hearken back to my limited days practicing family law, where you have legitimate points being made by credible actors in a tough situation. And if the mom and the dad, the parents, aren't able to come together on their own accord with an agreement about something like child custody, for example, somebody will decide. If people can't get together, and they've tried for 40 years, if they can't get together, somebody's got to make the decision. So in the family law context, that's a judge. In this context, it's the legislature. So there has been hard and good faith negotiations that have been ongoing. It's been languishing and languishing and languishing. We need to move this bill today A, to continue negotiations, and B, because it's permissible and in line with the promises we made and the statutory authority we have. The parties can still continue to negotiate from general to select file, but that's only going to happen if it moves. And if they're still unable to meet a resolution at that point, we'll have another decision in front of us. But we don't have to give the final word today if our goal is to continue the conversation amongst the parties. If you want to continue conversation amongst the parties, which I think there's no disagreement about, we need to move the bill today, and we have a very, very short amount of time to foster those negotiations. If those negotiations are not successful amongst the parties, there will be a point where we will have to make a policy decision. It is not this morning. If you want to give the parties the last chance to come together, we need to move the bill. And sometimes a nudge from the legislature helps to crystallize the issues, helps to bring people together, helps them to know there's an end time in front of them for negotiations, because we're saying this can't continue to languish. So this is permissible, it is appropriate, it is in line with how we handle other pension and retirement issues for public employees, and particularly for first responders. There is nothing new or different about how we have treated first responders on this benefit in other instances. And while of course we respect and honor local control, when locals don't keep their word to provide for a sound retirement package, the legislature retains the authority to step in. And if we don't allow for this movement and we allow the negotiations to languish or fall apart yet again, it will be an abrogation of our authority, and it will hurt recruitment and retention for first responders that all of our communities need, and our growing communities in particular.
Your time, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Conrad. Senator Doran, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Lieutenant Governor. Well, I have been pretty consistent the last couple of weeks. I've always gotten up and talked about our green sheet, and wow, we even outdid ourselves way more than I expected. It's on the bottom of the second page this time, not on top of the third page, but if everybody's had a chance to look at that, I invite you to look at it sometimes this morning or today. I don't know about some of the people that are leaving, they don't have to worry about it, but I do know that we passed the property tax funding bill yesterday, and that was going to show up in here, and I just didn't quite expect it to show up this big. We are there on select file now. When we come back next year, we will be working on the budget. We'll be working out on a 2-year budget. And these are plugged in numbers. I want people to remember that. These are plugged in numbers. So our revenue sure could be higher than this. We don't know those things. This is just history of what we've done in the past so many years. And these are plugged in numbers, but there we are at $1,764,000,000 in the hole. So yeah, we're going to talk about this bill, and we're going to talk about, in my mind, unfunded mandates to the city. And I've always been opposed to unfunded mandates, but I also want people to make sure they look at this. And as we go forward, we have about 5 days, I think, left here yet in the legislature, and we will have a lot of bills in front of us with a lot of funding things. A good share of this one here, this number, and I don't want to have it sound too bad, but a lot of that is a property tax issue, and we'll see where that goes. I made a comment on the mic that I thank the Revenue Committee and them for bringing a funding source with it. If we would have passed all that funding source with it, this wouldn't be near where it's at. But just to show people what it does to the state when we think we have money and we're appropriating money, and yet we have to, on that front page, we have to be, this year at least, we have to be above that minimum reserve. And when I look at the number there above the minimum reserve, we're getting pretty close to even this year. We're 99 million above the minimum reserve for this year. So just want to talk about that. I want to talk about the bill here in front of us all. Listening to some of the discussion, I know there's a lot of negotiations going on, and we'll see where we go. I probably am opposed to the bill. while I am opposed to the bill, I am opposed to amendment. Senator Jacobson's bringing one amendment that will come later here. I am for that. I will vote for the bill if that's on there. Been asked if I will vote for this to go to select files so they can continue negotiations. I've told him yes on that. I don't know if I will continue that though, just because of the fact that I look at our time here and the amount we have left. Would Senator McDonald yield to a question?
Senator McDonald, will you yield?
Yes.
Yes. I've been listening to the discussion. There's been 1984 year brought up and everything. Today, the way it sits today, without us passing this bill, how do, I call it, firefighters get some of these benefits other than negotiating with the city itself?
So yeah, I thank you for the question. So the promise that was made 40 years ago, we were part of that promise as the state. And it is fair to say, well, why aren't they taking care of this in those first-class cities individually at the collective bargaining table? They are attempting to. But we are part of the promise, therefore we're part of the problem, therefore we should be part of the solution. Right now, and this is, you look at this as a statewide first responder, this is part of our mission, I believe, as state senators. So to answer your question is, if they're doing it at the collective bargaining table, they have not been successful for 40 years, but also there was a promise made 40 years ago that we were part of as a state to get rid of the defined benefit, that we would get you to that number of 50%, and it's never happened.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. Appreciate that. Thanks, Senator McDonald, for answering question. I guess I have a real concern with the state mandating, and I had people explain to me there are other things out there that we kind of mandate or put out there, and that they have to pick up the funding. Have a hard time connecting all the funding with this, other than it's coming from the cities, and I think they should be the ones negotiating. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Dorn and McDonald. Senator Clemens, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm on the Retirement Committee and did hear the testimony regarding this bill. And I was a no vote on bringing it out of committee. It came out, we have 6 people on the committee. It was 4 yes and 2 no. And so it barely made it out of committee. I think my main reason is I think the parties involved should negotiate, let the cities negotiate with their employees rather than having the state override what the cities have been agreeing to. From what I heard, the cities negotiated reasonable compromises, and this bill goes well beyond what those negotiations included. And I just wasn't able to support adding on items that had not been agreed to in negotiations. I do support Senator Hughes' AM 313. One of the items that was a disputed item by the cities was expensive health benefits that were not in their negotiation agreement. Paying for the benefits for employees who are no longer working is a problem, because you're going to have replacements that are working that they're going to be paying for. So it's going to be adding more people to the health benefit plan that is not expected, and it's going to be a complete additional cost. I did file a floor amendment, FA 353, just went up there. It would delete line 21 on page 3 of AM 2984. That is another item that wasn't included. It's the amendment says base pay includes overtime, callback, and call-in pay. The current agreement with the cities says it excludes overtime, call-in, and call-in pay. And that's another item that was added on really in the committee amendment. And all of these are going to end up being a property tax increase. We've heard so much about property taxes, and I think the cities know best what they can afford and what's in their budget. So I am going to be opposing AM 2984 that has those, especially the health benefits and the additional pay that's in there. I would like to ask Speaker Arch a question.
Speaker Arch, will you yield?
Yes.
Speaker Arch, there's been some talk about the scheduling of this. Would you give us an update?
Yes, thanks for asking. I want to let the body know where we are. We are obviously now at the end of our session, and we have a lot of work left to do. So what I have said to Senator McDonnell, my commitment from the beginning has been to get these priority bills up so that they have the opportunity to have the hearing on the floor, and so far have been successful. I still have some commitments of some general file bills yet to come, and so what I said to Senator McDonnell was this morning, the time that can be dedicated to this bill is to noon, and so with the other commitments on the general file priority bills, we do not have time to bring this bill back.
1 minute.
So if there is whether there's a vote, whether there isn't a vote, I just want the body to know we are in crunch time, and 12 o'clock will be the time when we'll adjourn, and then wherever this bill is at that time is where it will be. I won't have time to bring it back. Thank you, Mr. President. And Senator Clements.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield the rest of my time to Senator Jacobson.
Senator Jacobson, you have 33 seconds.
I can't even say Mr. President in 33 seconds. So I'm going to yield my time back to the chair. I'll be up. I am bringing amendment 3229, which will be up next. I believe Senator Hughes is going to pull her amendment to allow my amendment to come up. And I think I will have an opportunity to speak on it then on my open. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator Clements.
Thank you, Senator Jacobson. Senator McDonnell, you're recognized to speak.
Hold on 1 second. I'll talk to you. Mr. President, so a couple things. I just want to make sure we know who we're talking about, which firefighters first. You should have gotten a handout. Of course, collective bargaining, important. I believe in it. The idea of what happens and what's happened in Omaha and Lincoln, we're not talking about those departments. We're going back to 40 years from a promise made, an agreement made, and never kept, that we were part of that process. So we are responsible. So I know there's been effort for 40 years at the collective bargaining table for these first responders. And who we're talking about is in Beatrice, 16 people, Columbus, 21 firefighters, Fremont, 23 firefighters, Grand Island, 63 firefighters, Hastings, 20 firefighters, McCook, 9 firefighters, Norfolk, 21 firefighters, North Platte, 39 firefighters, Scotts Bluff, 15 firefighters, South Sioux City, 10 firefighters, York, 15 firefighters. So we were talking earlier, and I appreciate Senator Mosier's professionalism when he said there's senators that have stood on this floor and talked about unfunded mandates. That's me. So here I am today talking about an unfunded mandate. This mandate is based on, again, an agreement that was made 40 years ago that was never kept. That does make a difference, I think, to me. And it is public safety. But I am the person that says we should not be handing down these unfunded mandates. And we are talking about approximately, I just read the numbers to you. Let's say it's approximately 2% of payroll. But it is important. It is needed. It is fair. They have been working on this, and others in the state Senate have come down here, and state senators have had this discussion. They have been at the negotiating table throughout the state talking about this problem. So I know people have worked on it. They just never come up with a solution. What Senator Jacobson's bringing, I don't agree with. But I agree with, at least he's trying to come up with his idea of a solution. I'm willing to work with Senator Jacobson on that. Senator Hughes, great discussion. I appreciate her position and trying to work with her on between general and select, but we are out of time. I appreciate the speaker given the time today, and we're looking at potentially using all of these approximately 3 hours. And it's been a good discussion, but we need to work on this today, move it from general to select so we can continue to work on it, take Senator Clement's ideas, Senator Jacobson's ideas, Senator Hughes' ideas, whoever wants to bring ways to improve this bill, and finally solve a 40-year problem that we helped create in the state of Nebraska by being part of a promise that was never kept. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator McDonald. Senator Hughes, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. There's a couple things I just want to give out numbers because I think, and Senator McDonald also kind of mentioned, we're not talking about the big city firefighters here, but just some interesting facts. In the state of Nebraska, paid firefighters, there are 1,491. And most of those are Lincoln, Omaha, the bigger cities. As Senator McDonald went that through, these cities we're talking about have maybe 16, 23. My district has York, which is 15. We also have 308 paid per call. So those are maybe kind of hybrid. They're not full-time, whatever. But guess what we have 15,419 of? Unpaid volunteer firefighters across the state. And I just want to start off with saying I support firefighters, and it is long-term in my family. My grandpa, Paul Luby, and I believe he was one of the founding starters of the Goner Volunteer Fire Department. My dad, Roger Luby, served for over 40 years in the Goner Fire Department. My brother is a current member of the Goner Volunteer Fire Department. My legislative aide, Matt Howe, is a current member of the Goner Volunteer Fire Department. And I have participated in numerous fundraisers for these. These are also important things. And I understand as communities get bigger, we do need these paid professionals, and we do need to provide them pay that for their work. And I understand they do need that early retirement with the effort that they put in and what they go through. So with that being said, this piece of it, that 2 years piece, I don't know that that completes the gap for these guys if they want to retire when they're 55 to get to 65. I think there can be more creative solutions to that. But I would like to pull FA 313 so that then we can get on to Senator Jacobson's amendment. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Without objection, it is withdrawn. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, Senator Jacobson would move to amend with AM 3229.
Senator Jacobson, you're recognized to open on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, I'm going to follow up a little bit. First of all, I want to begin with kind of where Senator Hughes went. Firefighters are great people. They provide a great public service that we need. Yes, they go into harm's way, no question about it. I think the most striking thing about what Senator Hughes said is the number of volunteer firefighters throughout rural Nebraska. Here's an interesting factoid. Go to North Platte. We have a paid force and a volunteer force. We've got folks over here paid with benefits, and we got people over here volunteer. Let me talk to you a little bit about volunteer firemen. When I go into rural areas, when I go up to Thedford and Mullen and rural areas of Nebraska, these individuals, these volunteers have full-time jobs. They have to drop doing what they're doing, get in their own personal vehicle, drive to the fire with their own money, no mileage reimbursement, put themselves in harm's way, including cancer risk and everything else, and they do it for free. They do it for free. We have talked so much on this floor about unfunded mandates. We've talked about how cities and counties and school districts, they've got to tighten their belts. And then the legislature is going to come in and get in the middle of negotiations and say, now we're going to mandate to you what you're going to do. And you go figure out how to pay for it. Well, you know how they pay for it? With property taxes. Any question as to why property taxes are out of control, it's crap like this. We should not be in the middle of these negotiations. We should be leaving this to the cities. These are not state employees. They're city employees. They should negotiate it. People preached to me when I brought the two-person crew bill, and they said, this is a collective bargaining issue. What are you doing getting involved in that? It's the same thing. Only in this case, it's all these municipalities that are having to pay it, which is you, the taxpayers, not a railroad company that's making millions and millions of dollars every year that affect public safety. My amendment does two things predominantly, and you've got a side-by-side comparison out there. We've heard a little bit about this from Senator Hughes as it relates to the post-retirement benefits. That just came out of nowhere. 2 years. If you have full family benefit, you get full family pay for 2 years. No pay for. Additionally, you look at the pooling option, this pooling thing, as written in the bill, says that you can pool your retirement funds. So Grand Island and North Platte, for example, could pool their retirement funds, but there's no details. The cities don't have any play in that. They don't have any input on that. They didn't have any negotiation power in that. What are the rules? What if they decide to separate it again? What are the administrative costs? Who's going to control that? You can't just go in and say we're going to allow pooling without any kind of agreements as to how that would work and make it subject to the cities being able to approve that. And then I want to talk a little bit about this promise of the defined benefit plan. For those of you who don't understand defined benefit plans and defined contribution plans, there was a time back in the 80s when every major corporation, most companies, had a defined benefit plan. What is a defined benefit plan? It's a pension plan. It's a guarantee that you're going to get a certain amount of money, whether the stock market is high, whether the stock market is low, whether the interest rates are high, whether they're low. And so whoever's guaranteeing that, they have to make up any differences and losses. And they have costs to go out and do actuarial projections to make sure that it's properly funded. So most everybody in the private sector went away from defined benefit plans and went to defined contribution plans, also known as 401k plans or 401b or whatever, whoever you're working for. And many governmental entities did the same thing. How does that work? There's a matching. Employee pays in, employer does a match. That's what we're talking about in here. Now let's talk about the rub that's occurred. You heard from Speaker Arch. There are cities out there that have been paying into Social Security, and then they ended up in this situation. They became a Class 1 city, and now they're having to pay a 13% match plus the 6.2. Now, there's a carve out in here in the original amendment, 2984, that would carve that out as it relates to Bellevue, Sarpy County. But what about everybody outside of Sarpy County? Lincoln County is not part of Sarpy County. I can tell you Scottsbluff County is not part of Sarpy County. Currently, when you go to Scottsbluff, Gehring, and they are two cities, which I'm sure Senator Hardman would back me up on that one. They are two cities. In fact, there's Terrytown in between. Scottsbluff has a paid force. Gehring does not. So if Gehring wants to go to a paid force, they're going to have the same problem that Bellevue has today. And LB 2984 does not fix that problem. AM 3229 does. My issue is threefold. Fix the disparity so that we're not double paying. Fix the 2 years retirement, allow that to be a negotiation. And either get details on the pooling or pull it. Pretty simple proposition. The league has been negotiating for 2 years with firefighters over this. 5 more days is not going to give them the time that they need. I'm asking you to vote for AM 3229, and if you do so, I will vote for LB 686. Without LB 3229, I'm urging you all to vote no, because this is it's a huge unfunded mandate to cities that aren't willing to do this based upon the normal negotiating process. They will agree to 3229. If there's negotiations that need to be had, I would suggest you meet with the league and you meet with the representatives of the league, the firefighters union, and you work out those differences in the next hour. Because otherwise, as Speaker Art said, we're going to move forward. I'm adamantly opposed to moving this to select. We all know the drill. Let's kick it to select, and then later when we get to select and we're finishing things up, nobody wants to deal with it. We need to deal with it now. We need to vote for 3229, and then we can vote for 686 as amended by AM 3229. I think with that, I think I've hit everything I need to hit here on my list of items. I would stand for any questions, and with that, I will yield the remainder of my time, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Jacobson, and you are next in the queue.
Well, again, I think I did enough in the open, so I'm going to go and pass over my time here and yield it back to the chair and maybe get back in afterwards. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Jacobson. Senator Dover, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to thank Senator McDonald for the amendment. I'm going to apologize in advance for repeating some of the talking points that the senators have already made today. I want to start off before I do address the bill and the amendment, just to say that I support firefighters. In fact, we voted $2.5 million for radios for firefighters because they're sorely lacking in the ability to communicate, and that communication is critical in a big fire. And I'll say that there's a difference, though, between what we did and appropriated those funds and what we're doing here, because we actually paid. So we passed $2.5 million in the budget for firefighters for radios. We paid for what our actions were, and this bill does not. So I'd like to speak to the bill and the amendment at this point. And the first thing I say is, why are we trying to fix this? Why are we trying to fix LB 686? You know, we sit here and we try to work things out, meet in the middle, and sometimes, you know, the bill just is not necessarily a bad bill. It's most of them, I believe, truly are well intended, but this is not fair. This is not a fair bill, and I'll just ask y'all a question. Why are we interfering with the relationship between cities and firefighters? They have a time to negotiate that which is addressed in this bill, and this is not the time. We sit here trying to cut our spending, cut our taxes, and we'll mandate this expense to the cities. And as stated earlier, what's the city to do then? Well, it's raise taxes. This seems so hypocritical to me. Please think about that. So again, we will in days to come wrestle and debate with tough choices that have to be made to lower taxes on Nebraskans. And in the same session, we're going to tell the city to raise theirs, please. I would encourage the legislature to address their own challenges and not force unfunded mandates on the cities of Nebraska. In many cases, cities negotiated in good faith with the firefighters. And I know in negotiations with employees of my company, sometimes they wanted health care, sometimes they wanted more wages. And usually, be quite truthful, I say, what do you want? Here's what the health care costs. Here's what that's going to cost. Would you like that in a wage, or would you like the health care? And I'll tell you, a lot of times people take the money. And that's happened in cities. So sometimes they may take retirement. Sometimes they want health care. Sometimes they want an increased wage. So many of these, if not all of them, are negotiated a little differently. And so now we want to apply something to lay over all of those negotiations, and we don't belong there. Please vote no on this bill, and let the cities and the firefights negotiate in good faith amongst themselves without a disinterested third party mandating what they will do, who is not going to pay for this bill. I would urge you to vote yes on 3229, Senator Jacobson's amendment. just in case this bill passes. But I would encourage you to vote yes on the amendment and no on LB 686. It isn't, we're trying to cut our own taxes. Everybody knows that. Why are we mandating an increase? I mean, we're robbing Peter to pay Paul. We do good down here and we force people to do bad up in the city. So I encourage you to vote no on LB 686. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Dover. Senator Clemens, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in support of AM 3229. I thank Senator Jacobson for bringing a compromise, and which would be a middle of the road help and also offer some benefits for the firefighters. And I just wanted to first go over what cities are involved, what cities are first-class cities. So I got a list of the first-class cities. That's that's the limit of who is involved here. And those cities, some have more and some have less paid firefighters, but they are clear across the state. It's not just like Senator Arch was talking about Papillion, Bellevue, but it goes in alphabetical order: Alliance, Beatrice, Bellevue, Blair, Chadron, Columbus, Crete, Fremont, Gearing, Grand Island, Gretna, Hastings, Holdridge, Kearney, La Vista, Lexington, McCook, Nebraska City, Norfolk, North Platte, Ogallala, Papillion, Plattsmouth. Plattsmouth is in my district. Ralston, Schuyler, Scottsbluff, Seward, Sidney, South Sioux City, Wayne, and York. So this is an item that's going to affect, I don't know, not all of our senators. Lincoln and Omaha are not in there, but anybody outside of there likely has a senator with a first-class city. The other item I wanted to discuss again, the healthcare coverage. I had a very informative email from the city administrator at York talking about the healthcare coverage. That 2 years of healthcare coverage is a high cost to cities and does not get to the firefighter goal of allowing members to retire closer to age 55. There are other solutions that have been a part of city negotiations with firefighters that would be fiscally responsible and cover a gap of 5 to 10 years instead of 2. So I think the important thing is that it is not going to help on being able to retire closer to 55 rather than having to work longer till 60 or 65. And paying for 2 years of health coverage for the small number of first-class firefighters in the state also sets the stage for a much larger unfunded mandate for first-class cities as the police come next year asking for the same or more. And I did have a call from a city near me who was currently negotiating their police contract. And they said if the proposed paid fire contract goes through, then their negotiations will be much more difficult and hard to keep within reason and within their budget, which tells me they're likely to have a property tax increase if they're not already at their maximum levy. I think the city in my district that's involved here may not have levy limit available if this goes through. I'm not sure what they would do. Well, what they would have to do if this is mandated to them, they would have to be cutting other city services or raising things like their water bill or electric bill to make up the difference for the shortfall. So I think it is important that this could be a domino effect if firefighters get more than what the cities are negotiating, then the police are going to also be requesting additional amounts. So then, and the other thing, back to the amendment that it isn't on the board yet that I submitted also was the.
That's your time, Senator.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Clemens. Senator McDonald, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. So trying to clarify a few things. We have been involved with the first-class city firefighters as a state of Nebraska since 1895. 40 years ago, we helped create a problem for the first-class city firefighters. That was not the intent. I was not here, but based on the idea that people wanted to make an agreement to help the first-class city firefighters. State was involved and said, if you go ahead and give up that defined benefit, we're going to make sure that you get to that number, 50%, and we're going to work with everyone and we're going to accomplish that. Promise made, promise not kept. Now we're hearing the idea that you can go ahead and go to the CIR and the CIR will fix this for you. CIR won't touch the benefit package. They'll assign a value to it. They'll assign a value to it, but they will not touch it. You cannot look somewhere else for somebody to fix a problem that you created. And I'm not talking about the 49 people, we weren't here. But we are part of this institution. We inherit good or bad. This is something we've inherited. People have turned their back on these first-class city firefighters for 40 years. Now we're running out of time. Senator Jacobson thinks he has 25 votes on his amendment. If that's true, we got 54 senators in here because someone's not telling the truth. What I'm asking is pull out of the queue, vote down Senator Jacobson's amendment, because that's what the firefighters are asking. Because if his amendment goes in, I want to kill the whole bill because you've done nothing. Those firefighters are out there asking for something that they negotiated over the last 2 years, been working on negotiations at the table for 40 years. Give them a vote. We talked about this last night. Talked about, hey, put your money where your mouth is. I'm running a card. My card might be wrong. I don't think it is. But we're going to have that card up on the board. If Senator Jacobson's right and he's got 25 votes for his amendment, so be it. That's the process. And then I want to kill the whole bill because that's what the firefighters are asking. I don't blame Senator Jacobson for bringing this amendment. I don't agree with it. I don't think he quite understands the problem and our options to fix it. But I will guarantee this. If you give us a chance to move amendment from the retirement committee in Senator Wall's bill without Senator Jacobs' amendment, I will work with him between now and select. Now, the speaker is going to tell you, hey, we're almost out of time. I understand. I will work on it with Senator Jacobson until midnight. I will work on it with Senator Hughes, Senator Clements. I will dedicate rest of the session, and potentially the speaker then will schedule it. Potentially he won't. I understand that. There's no guarantees. I'm just saying, finally, after 40 years, this problem was created on this floor by others. Let's at least have a vote on fixing it. And the fix is not Senator Jacobs' amendment. It's the retirement committee's amendment and Senator Wall's bill. So please push. And again, Senator Jacobson, would you yield to a question?
Senator Jacobson, would you yield? 1 minute.
Yes, I would.
Senator Jacobson, I'm not asking you at this moment to change your position. What I'm asking you is, let's clear the queue together and get a vote on your bill.
No.
Your amendment.
Not going to do it.
Based on what?
because we got other people that are in the queue that want to speak, and we're going to let them speak. You
No,
know?
I'm not ordering people to get on the queue. I'm just saying you and I would go to those people and say, please let's get a vote, because we have until noon.
Yes, we do, and we'll take it if we need to. We all know how this process works here in the legislature. We've got several people
Thank
in
you,
here
Senator Jacobson. Thank you. And
us.
I appreciate working with you. Thank you. So what I'm asking is now the people in the queue, and Senator Jacobson doesn't agree with me. Would you please pull out of the queue and let the firefighters have a vote? Let the first-class city firefighters have a vote. If Senator Jacobson's got the votes on his amendment, I'll live with it. We're not playing time games.
That's your time. Thank you, Senator McDonald. Senator Mosier, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. Greetings, colleagues. First of all, I would repeat my objection to telling the cities how to negotiate with their police and fire unions. Well, in this case, fire unions. That's something that the fire unions and the cities should negotiate on their own. We shouldn't be telling them what to put into their retirement unless we're going to pay for it. We're not paying for it. And I repeat, the unfunded mandate suggestion is that this is millions. This isn't 100,000, 200,000. It's millions. Millions for each city. Currently, in Columbus, the firemen pay, I think, 6.5% of their wage, and the city puts in 13%. So they put about 20% of their wages back. Under the Jacobson amendment, that would increase. I think almost the city contribution, I believe, goes to 15%, and the fire union contribution goes up. 6.5% is roughly equivalent to 1/2 of a Social Security contribution to retirement. And you can't live on your Social Security alone just putting away 6% a year. There's not enough return on it. So the cities are willing to put more money into the retirement fund. And if the firemen and EMTs are willing to put more money into it, then they can have a better retirement. But this is something that should be negotiated between the cities and the unions. It's not something that the state should be mandating. They just signed a contract in Columbus. So to come right up after that contract is signed and then give a benefit unilaterally with nothing else changing is, it flies in the face of contract negotiations. Jacobson's amendment is a compromise. Now, whether everybody's going to accept that if it passes, I don't know. But I think Senator Jacobson's compromise is reasonable. And I believe the cities are willing to sign on to it. Maybe the unions are not. But I think we need to pass Jacobson's amendment because there may be 24, 25 people that would vote this bill forward, and I don't think they'd be suggesting it come to a vote if they didn't believe they had the votes. And if that happened, that's going to be a disaster for first-class cities, a financial disaster. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Mosier. Senator Jacobson, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, once again, we need to continue to make sure all the information's out there on the floor, that everyone's fully aware of what's happening here. I think there's been a lot of discussion so far, making it very clear what this is. A huge unfunded mandate to first-class cities across the state. At a time when we're telling them that we're not going to give you any other tax relief, that you're on your own on property taxes. I can't even imagine that we're having this discussion, that we're going to, in North Platte alone, it's probably $250,000 budget hit if this bill would pass the way it is. Meanwhile, we've got an unpaid volunteer force who's taking the same risks, only getting paid nothing. We've got all of these volunteer forces out there. I agree we need to do more for firefighters. We absolutely need to do more for firefighters. We need to do more for volunteer firefighters throughout the state whose numbers are falling because they can't afford to do it anymore. They have to take time off their jobs to run to a fire in a moment's notice at their own expense, in their own vehicle, put their life on the line for free. Is that fair? Who thinks that's a good deal? And oh, by the way, when they turn 55, they're probably still working. Many of them are farmers. You know what the average age of a farmer is? Right around 65. Average age of a farmer. Many are over that age. They're still working. That's a pretty dangerous job. It's one of the top 10 dangerous jobs in the country. They don't have a pension plan. The pension plans are outdated. Certain governmental entities are about the only ones who have pension plans today. They've all converted to defined contribution plans. And oh, by the way, many defined contribution plans are set up where the employer puts up matches whatever the employee puts up. In this case, it's 2 to 1. Firefighters put up about 6.5%. The cities put up 13%. That's a pretty good deal. And then you take the risk in the market like everybody else out there that's working. Nobody else has a guarantee except certain governmental entities. This is a problem that is getting fixed, that could get fixed with real negotiation. That's what my amendment aims to do. Make some concessions and move this forward. The bill itself is no negotiation. It's a slam down of everything that was asked for was put into this bill. You want to talk about fair? Think about the volunteer firemen. How fair are we being to them? If we want to spend more money, let's spend some money helping them, at least reimburse their costs. But we're not doing that. Same thing with emergency services. A lot of volunteer emergency services will go out and actually pay for their training. Now, I think we've gotten to the point where we're actually subsidizing some of the training, but they go do the training on their own time, and then they go out and try to do life-saving measures to people who need it in rural areas.
1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. President. So AM 3229 is a reasonable compromise. If there's more to be compromised, fine. Do that from a collective bargaining standpoint. But 626 is a bad bill as it stands. It's a one-sided negotiation. It's an unfunded mandate to first-class cities. 3229 fixes the problem for those cities that are currently unpaid firefighters that want to go to paid for firefighters. They will be discouraged from doing it because they would have to do Social Security and this. My amendment fixes that. I'm not the bad guy here. I'm just bringing reasonableness to the bill and watching out for taxpayers, property taxpayers in particular. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Jacobson. Senator Erdman, you're recognized to speak.
Question.
The question's been called. Do I see 5 hands? I do. The question is, shall debate cease? All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. There's been a request to place the House under call. The question is, shall the House go under call? All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. Record, Mr. Clerk.
22 ayes, 2 nays to go under call.
The House is under call. Senators, please record your presence. Those unexcused senators outside the chamber, please return to the chamber and record your presence. All unauthorized personnel, please leave the floor. The House is under. Senator Vargas, please check in. Senators Frederickson, Dungan, and Von Gillerin, please check in and record your presence. The House is under call. All unexcused members are present. Senator Erdman, the vote was open on the cease debate. Will you accept call-ins? Mr. Clerk, we're now accepting call-ins.
Senator Von Gillern, voting yes. Senator Duncan, voting yes. Senator Hardin, voting yes. Senator Bostar, voting yes. Senator Brewer.
It's checked out.
Voting yes. Senator McKinney. Voting yes. Senator Linehan, voting yes. Senator Meyer, voting yes. Senator Brandt, voting yes.
Dick, we're going to record it.
Okay.
Record, Mr. Clerk.
26 ayes, 4 nays to cease debate, Mr. President.
Debate does cease. Members, the question is the adopt. Senator Jacobson, you're recognized to close on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President and colleagues. Let's say it one more time. If you want to vote for raising property taxes, here's your opportunity. If you want to vote for creating an unfunded mandate to first-class cities across the state, here's your opportunity. This is a problem that can be fixed with AM 3229. I would encourage you to vote accordingly, and we can vote for LB 686 and make it the best possible alternative to what we have today. Keep that in mind when you vote. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Jacobson. Members, the question is the adoption of AM 3229. There's been a request for roll call vote, reverse order. Mr. Clerk.
Senator Wishart, voting no. Senator Wayne. Senator Walls, voting no. Senator Von Gillern, voting yes. Senator Vargas, voting no. Senator Slama. Senator Sanders, voting yes. Senator Reapy, voting yes. Senator Raybold, Senator Merman, voting yes. Senator Moser, voting yes. Senator Meyer, voting yes. Senator McKinney, voting no. Senator McDonald, voting no. Senator Lowe, voting yes. Senator Lippincott, voting yes. Senator Linehan. Not voting. Senator Cowth. Voting yes, Senator. Senator Jacobson. Voting yes, Senator Ibach. Voting yes, Senator Hunt. Voting no, Senator Hughes. Voting yes, Senator Holcroft. Voting yes, Senator Hardin. Voting yes, Senator Hansen. Not voting, Senator Halloran. Voting yes, Senator Frederickson. Voting no, Senator Erdman. Not voting, Senator Dungan. Voting no, Senator Dover. Voting yes, Senator Dorn. Voting yes, Senator DeKay. Voting yes, Senator DeBoer. Voting no, Senator Day. Voting no, Senator Conrad. Voting no, Senator Clements. Voting yes, Senator Michaela Cavanaugh. Voting no, Senator John Kavanaugh. Voting no, Senator Brewer. Senator Brewer? Voting yes. Senator Brandt? Voting yes, Senator Bostelman? Voting yes, Senator Bostar? Voting no, Senator Boson? Voting yes, Senator Blood? Voting no, Senator Ballard? Voting no, Senator Armendariz? Voting no, Senator Arch? Voting yes, Senator Albright? Voting yes, Senator Aguilar? Voting yes.
Not voting.
Senator Michaela Cavanaugh changing from no to not voting. Vote is 26 ayes, 16 nays, Mr. President.
The amendment is adopted. I raise the call. Senator Hardin has some guests in the north balcony, FFA students from Mitchell High School. Please stand and be recognized by your Nebraska Legislature. Mr. Clerk, for a motion.
Mr. President, I have a priority motion. Senator Michaela Cavanaugh would move to reconsider the vote on AM 3229.
Senator Michaela Cavanaugh, you're recognized to open.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm reconsidering the vote because that vote kills this bill. So if we are genuine about supporting our first responders, I think we should all take a beat and reconsider what we just did. I understand the importance of property tax relief. I really, truly do. We should have thought of that more when we were passing the budget with pet projects in it. That comes at the expense of not being able to fund this and so many other important things. I was going to yield my time to Senator McDonald, but I can see him in conversation, so I will yield my time to Senator Conrad. I will yield my time to Senator Conrad, Mr. President.
Senator Conrad, you're recognized to speak, and you have 9 minutes, 8 seconds.
Very good. Thank you so much, Mr. President, and thank you to my friend Senator Michaela Cavanaugh for your leadership and quick work to file the motion to reconsider as the body kind of works through the ramifications of the last vote, which everybody can see was very, very closely divided and very diverse in terms of senators' thinkings in regards to both sides of the issues presented in Senator Jacobson's amendment, and perhaps reflective of some of the general thinking in regards to the broader bill. So in deference to Chair McDonald, who is in the middle of conversations as a member of the Retirement Committee, I just wanted to reaffirm a couple of key points as we take up the reconsideration motion, and as Chair McDonald and my friend Senator Walz, who's the primary introducer of the bill, have an opportunity to confer with each other and other legislative leaders and stakeholders who are here from our partners in local government and our first responders as well, to just kind of assess where we go in the very, very short term this morning. So I just wanted to reaffirm and reiterate that this is an issue before us that the legislature has created. The appropriate forum to address the issue is in the legislature, and that is why we are here today. We have talked about how this issue has not been able to be resolved on the local level for far too long. We have talked about how other forums like the CIR are not appropriate to take up this particular issue in regards to the issues before you and Senator Walz's amendment, and that is why they are in this forum. The issues and the problems that are present are a product of legislative creation. The other entities that could perhaps address them either do not have the jurisdiction or have refused to address them. The other thing that I want to let people know about is a few pieces. One, as part of these conversations, the local governments were offered no-cost solutions in regards to a different type of retirement plan. So when you hear about unfunded mandates and you hear about the dollars and cents, friends, there were offers made that didn't have those same implications, and those no-cost options were rejected. So we can't divorce ourselves from that reality. And of course, the local governments have their reasons for that, but they can't have it both ways either. You can't say, don't pass this because of the dollars and cents, but we also rejected no cost options. So I know not everybody outside of the retirement committee might know that, so I wanted to put that on the table. The other thing is, as you all know, and as time gets compressed and issues get up on the board, negotiations have continued to happen, including very recently. And what Senator Walz and Senator McDonald was asking the body to do today, which we still have an opportunity to do so, and the votes reflected in the Jacobson Amendment show how very, very closely divided this body is on this matter, was we're asking for a few folks to reconsider their position so that we can move from general file to select file and get the parties' heads together, try again, see where we are, and if indeed that fails, we'll have a straight up or down vote on where we are in the legislature on select file, and we'll move on with our lives. The other thing that I think we need to be clear about is, and Senator McDonald talked about this in his time on the mic, but if people do not support this path forward, that is their right to vote their heart, vote their head, talk with stakeholders, talk with their constituents, put aside the concerns that first responders and firefighters have brought forward. That's absolutely your right. But we're also asking, and first responders are asking, not for platitudes, not for I support first responders, but they're asking for your vote. And even if your vote has to be no or not in favor of their position, that's okay. But working men and women have a right to know where folks stand in this body so that they can figure out next steps in negotiations, so that they know what the support looks like or doesn't look like on the board, so that they know when senators come and talk to them, is it platitudes or is it actual support with your vote and with your voice? Even if you don't support the policy proposals on the board in the Walz Amendment or the Retirement Committee Amendment, and you prefer to follow some of the policy proposals in Senator Jacobson's amendment, those issues can still be negotiated from general file to select file. And we should give the parties an opportunity to come back to the table to see if they can find agreement, because the issue has languished far too long. And clearly there is a great deal of passion on both sides of this, but also a very, very close and significant division. So I think we owe it to the parties to give them at least one more chance to negotiate from general to select file. This is an appropriate forum because this policy dilemma is a product of the legislature's creation. The other entities or forums that could take this up at the local level have not done so. At the CIR, it's not appropriate for adjudication in that forum. And at some point, if the parties can't agree, the decision maker, the policy makers have to make a tough decision. And if that decision does not go in favor of the interests of working men and women, for whatever reason, working men and women have a right to know that. I want to also remind folks when it comes to the dollars and cents, not in all instances, but in many instances, the local governments make money off of the EMS runs. They're a revenue generator for the local government. Now, not all those bills are paid, and it doesn't work the same in every single community, but that's a significant factor that hasn't been on the record. So the local governments are happy to make money on the work of the first responders, but then not come to the table for either zero cost options, which is in a reasonable position, or for these options. So we can't take that for granted either. And we can't and we shouldn't take for granted, thank you, Mr. President, the really hard work that firefighters do, the life-saving work that they do, the strain on them and their family, both in terms of their physical health, their mental health, their time away from home. That's why you see a higher incidence in cancer, in mental health, and a host of other physical issues for firefighters due to the arduous nature of their work on our behalf to advance our shared public safety goals. Those sort of negative impacts on health and life hit different for first responders than they do for other governmental employees who have critically important jobs and are committed to public service as well. But it's not an apples to apples, and it doesn't take an actuarial genius or scientist to know that. We all know that in our hearts. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Conrad. Senator Vargas, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you. I rise in support of the reconsideration motion. I rise in support of the underlying bill. I voted in opposition to Senator Jacobson's bill, and I think to Senator Conrad's words, there was division on whether or not people felt both that they support the bill, they support the amendment, and we are making sure we're giving some time to Senator McDonald and Senator Jacobson and others to see if there's a pathway forward. And I think there should be a pathway forward because as we're looking at this legislation, I think sometimes we pass legislation and we look at the problem as, well, the problem hasn't been able to be solved, and now it's within our locus of control to do something about it. In this instance, and I know this was shared before, agreement hasn't been able to be possible with the parties. It's not something that is new. It's not something that's just a year. It's not something that's just a few years. This is a long-standing set of negotiations, and it's our responsibility to step up and to do something when they can't find consensus. I mean, we do this on many different issues. We do this on many issues when it comes to not just retirement and benefits, but we also do on issues when we're talking about investments. I see this more as a moral imperative to standing up for our first responders and firefighters and saying that we support working class and middle class families. This was not something done both lightly in committee. Chairman McDonald worked on negotiations. We supported those negotiations. Not everybody always agrees with what is happening, but that is the product that came out. It wasn't even the initial product. And what we have in front of us and what was made very, very clear is firefighters are in opposition to Senator Jacobson's amendment. And I was surprised. There were some people that voted for that amendment that said they were in support of firefighters in that negotiation. Well, here's our opportunity to change course. If you were looking at that vote and saying, well, I was trying to support it because it seemed like it was reasonable, but you know that the firefighters were against it, here is your opportunity to say, well, actually, you know what, I reconsider it. I want to support the negotiations and the talks that they're having right now, and to find a pathway forward, I want to support that reconsideration motion. I hope you do, and other people have already told many of us working on this bill, they support that and they're willing to take the time to do that. I'm asking you to think very thoughtfully about that with the amount of remaining time we have, especially for Senator McDonald and others that have been working on this issue for a couple of years in our retirement committee. This isn't a just, help us just because. It's help us because there is room to negotiate and we need the time to do that. And I should also say, we were only given 3 hours for this bill. I mean, that is a concern that I have, that we weren't even given 4 hours for this bill. There's 4 hours being afforded to other legislation that's coming up later. But that means we only have 3 hours to debate, work through the amendment on the floor here for a bill that is helping to not only stand by our firefighters and first responders and first-class cities. That's all we have. We're actually given less time to be able to solve this issue. So I'm asking you to give us more time. That more time is coming from the reconsideration vote. It's not whether or not you are for or against the underlying bill. It's whether or not you're for making sure that we can move forward in some way, shape, or form right now on the legislation. And there is a chart.
1 minute.
That shows Senator Jacobson's side by side on his amendment and the amendment that Senator McDonald and our committee is proposing from retirement. We're asking you because right now this has been put into our hands. I know some people got on the mic and said we need to leave it up to local control and the local municipalities, and it's their responsibility. They haven't been able to find a pathway forward. The CRR is not the place right now. This is also not where it's going to be. So it's our responsibility, in my opinion, that we can address some of the division on this and move forward on it. That's what we're asking of you. We're asking you to support the reconsideration motion, especially some people that said they were in support of this, but still voted for that amendment, so that we can move a pathway forward and figure out what's the best way for us to stand by working men and women that are risking their lives, making sure that we are doing everything we can for their retirement. That's what we're asking of you.
That's your time, Senator Vargas. Senator Conrad, you're recognized to speak.
Question.
The question's been called. Do I see 5 hands? I do. Members, the question is, shall debate cease? All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. There's been a request to place the House under call. The question is, shall the House be placed under call? All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. Record, Mr. Clerk.
21 ayes, 5 nays to go under call, Mr. President.
The House is under call. Senators, please record your presence. All senators outside the chamber, please return and record your presence. All unauthorized personnel, please leave the floor. The House is under call. Senators Frederickson, DeBoer, Bostelman, Ibaugh, Dungan, and John Kavanaugh, please return to the chamber and record your presence. The House is under call. Senator Ibaugh, please return to the chamber and record your presence. The House is under call.
Your mic is on too, unless you don't care.
All unexcused members are present. Senator Michaela Kavanaugh, you're recognized to close.
Oh. We have to vote on call the question still. Senator Conrad called the question, and you need to ask her if she'll take
Correct.
call-ins.
Thank you. Correct. Senator Conrad, the vote is open. Would you accept call-ins?
Yes.
Thank you. Yes. We're now accepting call-ins, Mr. Clerk.
Senator Dungan, voting yes. Senator Bostar, voting yes.
Record, Mr. Clerk.
25 ayes, 4 nays to cease debate, Mr. President.
Debate does cease. Senator Michaela Kavanaugh, you're recognized to close.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, this is an opportunity to save this bill and move it forward to fight for another day. And I would like to yield the remainder of my time to Senator McDonald.
Thank you, Senator Kavanaugh. Members, the question is the motion to Thank you. Senator McDonald, you have 4 minutes, 35 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator Kavanaugh, for the time. What I'm asking is for us to, of course, reconsider, vote no on Senator Jacobson's amendment. But I want to tell you, in the last 20 minutes, Senator Jacobson has gone out of his way to try to come up with a compromise. Now, here we are. We know we have 5 days left. We know the speaker is stopping debate on this at noon. And he told us that. He told me that yesterday. But also, I really do think we could get to a compromise. And again, not excluding Senator Hughes or Senator Clements that have brought up ideas. But I know Senator Jacobson, I can't guarantee, but I'm 99% sure we could get there. So what I'm asking is, yes on reconsider, no on Senator Jacobson's amendment, yes on retirement. We move the bill to select. Now, not living in a fantasy world here, and also knowing what the speaker told me, is that we could come up with a compromise and everyone could be happy. And we still might not have time to get back to this on select. That's the reality of where we are, and I understand it. But I sure would like an opportunity to try And if we don't get there, we don't get back there. If we don't get there within the compromise, of course, the speaker's not going to schedule it on select. But if we do, this solves a 40-year problem. A promise that was made, an agreement, and I believe that it was made in good faith. I believe everyone that worked on this, that was sitting in these chairs, really believed that they could do this and would work for the first-class cities. It hasn't. Going back to the idea of should they take care of it at the collective bargaining table, I don't disagree with that process. I believe in it. The problem with that is if they continually can't agree, the CIR will not make that agreement for them. The Commission of Industrial Relations, we won't do it. They'll assign a value to your benefit package and potentially take it off your wages or add it to your wages, but they won't solve this problem. Unfortunately, the problem, again, that was not the intent to create a problem, but it was created 40 years ago, and we were part of that as the legislature. So now we have to be part of the solution. That's what I'm asking for, is a chance, so we reconsider. We would not vote for Senator Jacobs' amendment, even though I think there's things in there we could work on together and get done before we got to select. Vote for the amendment from the Retirement Committee, and then potentially, if we have time, the speaker and have time and a compromise, then the speaker would find time for us to talk about on select. Potentially, we won't have enough time. So I understand that, but that's what I'm asking. And I think the work that's been put in on this for the last 2 years by a number of people on both sides of the bargaining table, both sides of the issue has been done, I believe, in good faith. I want to try to continue that and come up with a compromise that everyone can agree upon. So please vote for the reconsider.
1 minute.
And vote against Senator Jacobs' amendment, vote for the retirement amendment and Senator Wall's 686. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator McDonald. Members, the question is the motion to reconsider. All those in favor, vote aye. All those opposed, vote nay. Record, Mr. Clerk.
29 ayes, 11 nays on the motion to reconsider, Mr. President.
The motion is adopted. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, at this point, we are back to consideration of the adoption of AM 3229.
I raise the call. Senator Jacobson, you're recognized to open on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. There's not a lot more that needs to be said. In the interest of time, I'm going to be very brief. I think that I've stated all the facts earlier. I think this is a collective bargaining agreement that needs to be done between the cities and their local firefighters union. I believe that at this point, we've reached what we're going to reach in terms of a compromise amendment in AM 3229. And if we can pass that, we can move on. But otherwise, I cannot vote for 686 in its current form. So with that, I'll yield the remainder of my time. And if people want to get out of the queue, go ahead. Let's get the vote moving forward and move on to other items. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Jacobson. Senator Dover, you're recognized to speak.
I yield my time to the chair.
Thank you, Senator Dover. Senator Mosier, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, the underlying bill is meddling in affairs between the unions and the first-class cities, and the first-class cities and the unions should be able to negotiate wages, benefits, on all those things between themselves without the legislature telling them what minimum benefits are, especially when the legislature is not going to appropriate money to pay what those retirement funds are going to amount to. To this point, some of the unions were only paying 6% or 6.5%, and actuarially, that's not enough. Even with the cities paying twice that at 13, is not enough to retire earlier than 65 and not at a high enough benefit to fully retire. So those are things that the unions and the cities should negotiate. Now, if we're going to meddle in that anyway, then I think Senator Jacobson's amendment is a reasonable compromise. At least the cities will accept it. It appears that, you know, maybe the supporters of the 686 are not acceptable to Jacobson's amendment, but the first-class cities, I think, are in agreement with Jacobson's amendment. So I'd encourage you to stick with Senator Jacobson on his amendment, and then we can go from there. This only moves at one stage. Even if we approve his amendment and it moves forward, there are still 2 more rounds of approval that it needs. So there's no reason to vote no on Jacobson's amendment when at least one of the parties to the disagreement is in support of it. And again, this is an unfunded mandate. The cities operate on pretty tight budgets, and this is going to increase property taxes. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Moser. Senator Clements, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I again stand in favor of AM 3229. I believe that's a reasonable compromise. And there was a handout from the League of Municipalities talking about the differences. One of the big differences that 2984 has, it's not been an agreement, is the definition of salary. Now, I've not talked about overtime callback and call-in pay. The cities have agreed to pay for that, but there's other benefits reported on their federal income tax withholding statement is how the wording is. In other words, the employee's retirement contribution would have to be also part of salary, which their contribution is going to be going to 12.7%. So that would increase the city's going to have to pay the contribution on another 12.7% of pay, which is going to be a major increase in cost to the city. So I think AM 3229 would give the overtime pay, callback and call-in pay, but I think adding the employee's contribution to the retirement plan as well and calling that pay that's subject to the city's shared cost is excessive. There are a couple of things that are the same in the 2 amendments. The spouse benefit, a spouse receiving a death in the line of duty benefit is going to be able to receive the remaining amount in the firefighter's retirement account. And then there's also a vote to elect into Social Security. I think a lot of these really need to be electing Social Security. I was surprised at how many are not covered by Social Security benefits. And AM 3229 agrees with the firefighters by allowing firefighters not already required to pay into Social Security to vote to elect into Social Security. I think that would help a lot of them. And the Jacobson Amendment does allow for that. And then the pooling of the accounts, putting all their different cities' accounts together is not defined who pays the administration costs, and if somebody changes what they're doing, how do they split that apart? So and then of course the health insurance after retirement is another item that is not included in the Jacobson Amendment because it's paying insurance for people who are no longer working, where you've just replaced them. You are paying insurance for a working employee, and additionally, quite an additional cost. So those are the items that the city has worked on and agreed to a number of items. The extra items are far and above what cities' budgets are able to stand. So I stand in favor of AM 3229. Ask your vote for that, but I'm not able to support 2984 if 3229 fails. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Clements. Seeing no one else in the queue, the question before the body is Senator Jacobson to close on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll be very brief. First, I just want to say I appreciate Senator Walz for bringing the bill. I do care about firefighters. I think just like with the State Patrol, I think we've got to be mindful of what's the right number and who's the right people to negotiate. Was it a signing on 1087 last Friday in Fremont, and Senator Walz was there, and we were talking to people, and I made the comment that I sit in front of Senator Walz. Sometimes that's not a really good thing, and today might be one of those days, but I think we're going to be fine. Senator McDonald, I really appreciate him. I'm going to miss him leaving the body. I will say the only thing I won't miss about Senator McDonald not being here is early on when I got into the legislature, the governor kept mistaking me for Senator McDonald. Now, I'm sure one of us should be insulted. I'm just not sure who. So with that said, I would encourage your green vote on AM 3229. This is the best compromise we're going to get. If we want to move the bill forward, it has to move forward with 3229. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Jacobson. The question before the body is the adoption of AM 3229. All those in favor vote aye. All opposed vote nay. It's been a request to place the House under call. The question is, shall the House go under call? All those in favor vote aye. All opposed vote nay. Record, Mr. Clerk.
11 ayes, 1 nay to go under call.
The House is under call. Senators, please record your presence. Those unexcused senators outside the chamber, please return to the chamber and record your presence. All unauthorized personnel, please leave the floor. The House is under call. All unexcused members are now present. Senator Jacobson, a vote was open. Will you accept call-ins? We're now accepting call-ins.
Senator Bostar voting no. Senator Armendariz voting yes.
Record, Mr. Clerk.
24 ayes, 17 nays on the adoption of the amendment.
The amendment is not adopted. Returning to debate on the committee amendment. I raise the call. Seeing no one in the queue, Senator McDonald, you're recognized to close.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, colleagues. The work that Senator Jacobson did, the work that Senator Hughes did, the work that Senator Clements and others, we're going to continue that work. Now, there's two things that have to happen here. We have to have, if you decide, and I'm asking you to move the amendment, the retirement amendment through and LB 686 onto select. The only way that you will see this bill again is there's going to have to be two things happen. We have to come up with a compromise to bring to the speaker. Then the speaker has to find the time. Now, again, I believe everyone here and on the other side of the glass is going to sincerely try to find a compromise. We're on the shot clock. Time is running out. At that point, we will go to the speaker and say we have a compromise. If we don't, we of course never go to the speaker. But once we come hopefully to that point where we have a compromise, we'll ask the speaker to please schedule it. The speaker might say, I'm sorry, we're out of time. That's just the reality of where we are. But at least this gives us a chance. And someone just mentioned it's almost like the comedy Dumb and Dumber. At least you're telling me we got a chance. But I think we've got a good chance. I really do. Not so much because of the time constraint, but because of the people that are involved. I really do believe the people that on this floor will work together, and the people on the other side of the glass and come up with a compromise. At that point, we can bring it to the speaker, and hopefully there's going to be time for us to discuss this on select. So I'm asking for, please, your green vote on the retirement amendment and Senator Wall's bill. Thank you.
Body of the question is the adoption of AM 2984. All those in favor vote aye. All opposed vote nay. It's been a request for a call of the House. The question is, shall the House go under call? All those in favor? All those in favor vote aye. All opposed vote nay. Mr. Clerk, record.
23 ayes, 4 nays to go under call.
The House is under call. Senators, please record your presence. Those unexcused senators outside the chamber, please return to the chamber and record your presence. All unauthorized personnel, please leave the floor. The House is under call. Senators Dorn, Jacobson, McKinney, Vargas, Clements, and Hughes, please check in. The House is under call. All unexcused members are checked in. The vote was open. Senator McDonald, will you accept call-ins? Roll call vote, reverse order. Mr. Clerk.
Senator Wishart. Voting yes, Senator Wayne. Senator Walls. Voting yes, Senator Von Gillern. Voting yes, Senator Vargas. Voting yes, Senator Slama. Senator Sanders. Senator Reapy. Voting no, Senator Raybold. Senator Merman. Voting no, Senator Moser. Voting no, Senator Meyer. Voting no, Senator McKinney. Voting yes, Senator McDonald. Voting yes, Senator Lowe. Voting no, Senator Lippincott. Senator Linehan. Not voting, Senator Cowth. Voting no, Senator Jacobson. Voting no, Senator Ibach. Voting no, Senator Hunt. Voting yes, Senator Hughes. Not voting, Senator Holdcroft. Voting no, Senator Hardin. Voting yes, Senator Hansen. Voting no, Senator Hansen, not voting. Senator Halloran. Voting yes, Senator Frederickson. Voting yes, Senator Erdman. Voting yes, Senator Duncan. Voting yes, Senator Dover. Voting no, Senator Dorn. Voting no, Senator Decay. Not voting, Senator DeBoer. Voting yes, Senator Day. Voting yes, Senator Conrad. Voting yes, Senator Clements. Voting no, Senator Michaela Kavanaugh. Not voting, Senator John Kavanaugh. Voting yes, Senator Brewer. Voting yes, Senator Brandt. Voting yes, Senator Bostelman. Voting no, Senator Bostar. Voting yes, Senator Boston. Voting yes, Senator Blood. Voting yes, Senator Ballard. Voting yes, Senator Armendariz. Voting no, Senator Arch. Not voting, Senator Albright. Voting no, Senator Aguilar. Not voting. Vote is 22 ayes, 15 nays, Mr. President.
The amendment does not advance. Mr. Clerk,
Okay. Mr. President,
raise the call.
Senator Michaela Kavanaugh moved to reconsider the vote just taken on AM 2984 with MO 1364.
Senator Kavanaugh, you're welcome to open on your motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is exhausting. Okay, would Senator McDonald like my time on the opening? Senator McDonald, would you like my time on the opening? I'll yield my time to Senator McDonald.
Senator McDonald, you're yielded 9 minutes, 45 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator Kavanaugh. So it's pretty clear the negotiations are deadlocked still. Senator Jacobson's amendment did not get the 25. The Retirement Committee's amendment did not get to 25. So here's what we could consider doing is that we move LB 686, Senator Wall's bill, without any amendments. Now, at that point, we're still back to the discussion of can we come up with a compromise, which I think we can. If we don't, of course, we never see LB 686 again this year. If we do come up with a compromise, which I think we can get there, then we ask the speaker to find us time, which potentially the speaker at that point says, I don't have time left in the session for LB 686. But at least if we move the bill to select without now the amendment from retirement, we know we're not going to have the amendment, Senator Jacobson's amendment, but we have all those ideas and the discussion's been had on the floor, and we will work on it today and tomorrow and hopefully have a compromise and bring it to the speaker for scheduling. And again, the speaker's made it very clear that yes, please work on a compromise, but at the same time, even if you get there, he doesn't know if he's going to have time left in this session to schedule it. So that's where we are. There's no guarantees, but if we did move LB 686 without any amendments, it still gives us a chance to come up with that compromise amended on select and have that discussion at that time if there's time left in the session. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator McDonald. Senator Raybold has guests in the north balcony, 39th grade students from Lincoln East High School. Please stand and be greeted by your Nebraska Legislature. Turning to the queue, Senator Jacobson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, I'm back again. This bill without my amendment is a bad bill. If you, again, as I said before, if you want to vote for unfunded mandates, you want to vote for Class 1 cities to have to take on significant additional debt or kill their budgets or cause them to raise property taxes or just lay off part of their paid force, rely on more volunteer force or fewer fire trucks, lower maintenance. This money doesn't fall out of the sky. There's no A bill on this. We're right. There is no A bill. There's no appropriation. There's no fiscal note because this is an unfunded mandate. Unfunded mandate in an area that the legislature should not be involved. We can talk all day long about protecting the taxpayer. We're not protecting the taxpayer with this amendment and this bill. So I want to make it clear. You have to go back to your constituents and explain to them why you are raising their property taxes if you vote for this bill. It can't be any simpler than that. This negotiation needs to occur between the cities and their firefighter union. End of story. Vote no on AM 2984. Vote no on LB 686. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Jacobson. Senator Walls, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank the speaker, first of all. I don't know where he is. But I do want to say thank you to the speaker for allowing us to get this on the floor and debate it. I want to thank my colleagues for the professional courtesy and the extended grace that they are giving our first responders to have one more chance to negotiate. I appreciate that work. I don't have a lot left to say, but I do want to say this. To the people outside the glass, it is my sincere hope that negotiations taking place are thoughtful and intentional, because that has not happened. That we are doing our very, very best, that we're giving it our best effort to provide benefits to our first responders, not just get by and go on another 30 years, but that we're doing our very best. Fulfilling our duty to find solutions with integrity, with commitment, and honesty. And honesty. Putting forth your best effort. Doing the very best that you can. Listen, colleagues, when our firefighters respond to a 911 call for help, they don't respond and do a substandard job. Instead, they exert every bit of energy to save a life. And it doesn't matter whose life they're saving. There's no discrimination in that. They make every effort to save a life. Again, I sincerely hope that during this time of negotiation, we make every effort to do the very best that we can for our firefighters. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Walls. Senator Von Gillern, that's me, has guests in the south balcony from Aldrich Elementary, approximately 76 fourth graders. Please stand and be welcomed by your Nebraska Legislature. Turning back to the queue, Senator Dungan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, colleagues. I rise today just briefly to say I really appreciate the conversation we've been having. There's been a lot of running around and people negotiating on this, and I really want to thank all of the stakeholders involved because I think everyone's doing a really good job. I just want to say I do stand with our firefighters. We need to make sure we do fulfill that promise that we made to them. It sounds like there's maybe some agreements that have been worked out, so I would yield the remainder of my time to Senator McDonald.
Senator McDonald, you're yielded 4 minutes and 30 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. President. So here we are. Thank you, Senator Dungan. What we're going to ask to do is for Senator Kavanaugh to pull her reconsider motion. Of course, we already know the feeling right now on the retirement amendment. Just move LB 686 to select. Now, two things have to happen. We have to find a compromise to bring to the Speaker. If we have that compromise, then the Speaker has to find the time. So we might get to the compromise, we might not, but if we do, the Speaker might say, we don't have time. But at least it gives us a chance to continue this discussion. And as I mentioned earlier, working with Senator Jacobson and others, I think we can get there. So at least we would have a chance. So that's all I'm asking is to move LB 686 to select. We'll work on a compromise. If we don't have one that we can all agree on, then we're done. If we do, then we'll go to the Speaker, say we have a compromise and please find the time. And he might say, I can't find the time, or he might schedule it. So there's no guarantees here, but at least it's a chance to continue the work on LB 686. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator McDonald. Seeing no one else in the queue, Senator Michaela Kavanaugh, you're recognized to close on your motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to withdraw my motion.
So ordered without objection. Mr. Clerk.
Senator McDonald, you had previously filed AM 2285. I understand you wish to withdraw that.
So ordered. Mr. Clerk.
Senator Clements, I have an amendment from you, Floor Amendment 353.
Senator Clements, you're recognized to open on your floor amendment.
I withdraw that amendment.
So ordered. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, Senator Clements would offer Floor Amendment 355.
Senator Clements to open on your floor amendment.
Yeah, that was also one that, especially this paying retirement on the firefighters, on the employees' retirement contribution, which was it's like 12.7%, another 12.7%, which I think would be in 686 if this amendment doesn't pass. But I just want to say that I am not going to be able to vote for LB 686, although I will. I'm going to allow a vote as Senator McDonald was asking for, and Senator Jacobson. So I withdraw FA 355.
So ordered. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, I have nothing further on the bill.
Seeing no one else in the queue, Senator Jacobson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll be very brief. I'd like to go ahead and get the vote done here before noon. Senator McDonald and I have worked together on some of these issues and trying to figure out if there is a compromise. I think what he's outlined, what the Speaker's outlined is correct. I still remain opposed to the amendment. I remain opposed to the bill. I'd rather kill the bill now and move on. But I think what he's outlined is correct in terms of where we're at. I don't anticipate a compromise because the issues that have been talked about at this point, I think, are somewhat immovable forces. So it's going to ultimately come down, is this legislature going to force this mandate on communities? Because that's where we're likely going to end up. So I just want to acknowledge that I've appreciated the cut back and forth with Senator McDonald. I think with the days remaining, it doesn't make sense to move forward, but I'm going to vote no on the amendment and the bill, and then we'll see where we go from there. So thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Jacobson. Seeing no one else in the queue, Senator Walls, you're recognized to close.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just want to say again, thank you to everybody who's been involved in this conversation and giving us a chance to allow for more negotiations. It's very much appreciated. Really, colleagues, a green vote today is a vote for firefighters. A red vote is a vote against our firefighters. I am asking you to please vote green. Thank you, Mr. President.
You've heard the closed question before the body is the advancement of LB 686. All those in favor vote aye. All opposed vote nay. Been a request to place the House under call. The question is, shall the House go under call? All those in favor vote aye. All opposed vote nay. Mr. Clerk, please record.
30 yeas, 5 nays, place House under call, Mr. President.
The House is under call. Senators, please record your presence. Those unexcused senators outside the chamber, please return to the chamber and record your presence. All unauthorized personnel, please leave the floor. The House is under call. Senators Jacobson, Hughes, Boson, and Hansen, please check in. All unexcused members are now present. Roll call vote in reverse order has been requested. Mr. Clerk.
Senator Wishart, voting yes. Senator Wayne, Senator Walls, voting yes. Senator Von Gillern, voting no. Senator Vargas, voting yes. Senator Slama, Senator Sanders, Senator Reapy, voting no. Senator Raybold, Senator Merman, voting no. Senator Mosier, voting no. Senator Meyer, voting no. Senator McKinney, voting yes. Senator McDonald, voting yes. Senator Lowe, not voting. Senator Lippincott, Senator Linehan, not voting. Senator Kauth, voting no. Senator Jacobson, voting no. Senator Ibaugh, voting no. Senator Hunt, voting yes. Senator Hughes, voting yes. Senator Holcroft, voting no. Senator Hardin, voting yes. Senator Hansen, not voting. Senator Holleran, voting yes. Senator Frederickson, voting yes. Senator Erdman, voting yes. Senator Dungan, voting yes. Senator Dover, not voting. Senator Dorn, not voting. Senator DeKay, not voting. Senator DeBoer, voting yes. Senator Day, voting yes. Senator Conrad, voting yes. Senator Clements, voting no. Senator Michaela Kavanaugh, voting yes. Senator John Kavanaugh, voting yes. Senator Brewer, voting yes. Senator Brandt, voting yes. Senator Bostelman, voting no. Senator Bostar, voting yes. Senator Bosson, voting yes. Senator Blood, voting yes. Senator Ballard, voting yes. Senator Armendariz, voting no. Senator Arch, voting no. Senator Albright, voting no. Senator Aguilar, voting yes. Senator Lowe, voting yes. Vote is 25 ayes, 14 nays, Mr. President, on advancement of the bill.
The bill does advance. Mr. Clerk. Is it call?
Mr. President, notice that the Education Committee will be having an executive session today in room 2102 at noon. Education Committee exec session 2102 at noon. Additionally, the Transportation Telecommunications Committee will hold an executive session of the committee in room 1113 following the committee's public hearing at 12:30. Additional items, your Committee on Enrollment Review reports Legislative Bill 1073, 1073 A, 1085, 903, 1326, 1214, 1070, 910, 1029, 196, 196A to select file, some having E&R amendments. Additionally, amendment to be printed from Senator McKinney to LB 1344. Finally, Mr. President, priority motion. Senator DeBoer would move to recess the body until 1:30 p.m.
Question for the body is, shall we recess till 1:30 p.m.? All in favor say aye. All opposed say vote. All opposed vote nay. We are recessed.